Jim Ryan out at PlayStation. We're going to talk about that, what that means for Sony, and what can we look for from PlayStation over the next few years as the sea is about to change. Here next on Pushing Polygons. With Jim Ryan announcing his retirement in March of 2024 at PlayStation, one has to start wondering where the company is going to go next. Now, announced through Bloomberg and other financial sources, it's saying Hiroki Totoki is going to take over the PlayStation brand through the intermittent time as a permanent CEO for PlayStation can be president or CEO of PlayStation can be established, continuing to do his duties as chief financial officer for Sony. Now, Hiroki Totoki will be reporting directly to the CEO of Sony Corporation because of his other duties. However, this does put PlayStation in a very fine point piece. Now, before we get into where we could be going next with PlayStation, one has to ask themselves what led to his departure. Now, of course, in a lot of public positions, especially at that level. Now, Jim Ryan took over PlayStation in 2019. He's been in the role for 4 or 5 years now. A lot of people at that level, as I've heard on podcasts and many times, only have so many years until they are forced to retire. So when you step into a position like that, you could be signing your paper. Now, being that Sony is a Japanese company, those rules could be very different, and there is no actual saying whether or not Jim Ryan is being forced out. However, one important thing to note, on top of the fact that Jim Ryan is the executive in charge of Sony Computer Entertainment, he is also a vice president officer of business and network services at Sony. So he has additional duties on top of his role as the PlayStation brand chief. Now, let's turn that around for a minute and think about why he might be stepping down. Recently, Sony is investigating a hack that took place, and of course, that compromised Sony's networking services. It compromised a lot of things. Now, if everybody looks back to 2011, Sony had the huge PSN breach that ended up shutting down most of Sony's online services for over a month. They were sued on this more recently, and they also, if you didn't take one of the free games, you ended up getting a small check, but Sony did offer games at that time for the original breach. It's safe to say that a lot of the projects in development that were greenlit by both Herman Hulst and Jim Ryan are pretty safe at this point, with the 10 live service games most likely coming to fruition, along with the projects, single player projects, by the way, that Sony already has in development. So we're talking about Wolverine at this point because we don't know what Sony has beyond that. However, with Jim Ryan stepping down, there will be a question of whether Sony will continue the route of the live service game, or whether some of the expansion that Sony has been doing will continue under Totoki. With a global recession in the eyes of those on Wall Street, there are questions about how much money is going to be spent and whether the risks are going to be worth it. Of course, big risks equal big games in the entertainment industry. It is going to be a tough question of whether Sony will stay the course, or with Totoki being a finance guy primarily, if he's just going to look at the projects that have continued to benefit Sony and continue in that direction. One thing to note, that under Totoki, unless they find a CEO immediately, the software development roadmap, I guess that's the word I was looking for, will be dictated, or it will be greenlit by Herman Hulst and Hiroki Totoki. So PlayStation 6 could actually seem very different than the PlayStation 5 generation, as PS5 really had a different look from the PS4. It will also be interesting to note whether Hiroki Totoki will be more communicative than the current Jim Ryan regime, where Jim came out right before the PlayStation 5 came out. It was being announced, and he said, we're going to let the games do the talking. And they have let the games do the talking. Whether it was new games such as Miles Morales and the upcoming Spider-Man 2, to third-party exclusives such as Final Fantasy Rebirth, which is coming out early next year. The visuals and the games that have been provided on the PlayStation platform and their exclusives, whether they were remasters or slight expansions, have been great. Jim Ryan, in the annals of PlayStation history, may not have been the CEO and leader that the fans have wanted, and whether his retirement is voluntary or not, may have not been the leader PlayStation needed right now. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you guys have opinions on whether good riddance to Jim Ryan or he was a good CEO, I'm sorry to see him go, let me know in the comments below. If you like this video and you want to see more videos like this, leave this video a thumb up. And if you like this content, please subscribe. With that being said, I want to thank you guys, and I will see you in the next video.